Hey there, you filthy flapjacks. My name's Joe Keyport.
And I'm Wes Muilenburg.
And you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. This is technically our third episode. Well, fourth if you count the one we shot.
The lost episode.
The lost episode that will remain lost unless you really dig on the internet.
It's technically still on SoundCloud and on our Facebook page, but don't look for it. Don't do it.
It's not great because that was our test episode. It was recorded when we still kind of didn't know what we wanted to do yet. Mm-hmm. And so since then, we have improved it. We're on our third episode under the Ear Coffee Podcast name.
Legit, like trademark and everything.
Yes, this should have been our first episode where we introduce ourselves, what we're doing, and kind of what this is all about. But we're like, nah, we're going to start interviewing bands first.
We jumped right in, and
we did.
I think that's not necessarily admirable, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed the fact that we just kind of started with our bands.
So today we're debuting the non-interview version of the podcast. We're going to review an album. That was one thing that we're keeping from the lost episode, and we are going to be talking about Preoccupation's new album, New Material.
New Material. They did release some new material on New Material.
I wonder if they get those jokes a lot. Probably, but also like 3 people total listen to them, and it's me, Joe, and Anthony Fantano. So
yes.
Not as often.
It's an interesting album. It's definitely their most commercially viable album. We will also be talking about, along with the album, we'll talk about some new music that we're excited for coming out and kind of our review process. Well, I'm the one on the blog who's done the most reviews.
Yeah, I've yet to actually publish any legitimate reviews. I did like a kind of off-the-cuff short review, and that was going to be like the clever name for it, but it's not that clever. And then I did a really personal review of a Lecrae album because I don't like Lecrae, but that's mostly because I had to listen to his music for 8 hours straight once when I was a child, and that has nothing to do with his music in any seriousness, so we deleted that.
Yeah, and so it's just kind of, but we both still have our own methods of coming towards an album and talking about it in a more academic way other than it sucked or it was awesome.
I like this song because it's pretty.
Exactly. So we'll be talking about that and many more things here on the Ear Coffee Podcast. When it comes to reviewing albums, I know I'm the one who's done the most reviews here on Ear Coffee, but we both have a kind of a similar approach when we talk about albums and when we take them apart academically.
Yeah, like I kind of did at least applied our process is somewhat similar, but I kind of applied it when we were doing our end of the year list, and that was like the closest I got to reviews because I've actually yet to write a formal review for the blog. I have like a weirdly personal Lecrae review and like a kind of haphazard off the cuff Mark Kozlak review that I wrote at like 5 a.m. after listening to the album once without paying attention. And it turned out better than I expected, but we've kind of developed a process to write about things in a more coherent way where we actually like kind of know what we're talking about instead of like, I like the song because it's catchy, or like really surface level stuff like that.
Because it definitely takes any album, the more you sit with it and listen to it, it's going to give you different things. So personally, I like to listen to it at least twice. I kind of say I listen to an album 2.5 times before I start a review just because I like to listen to it once, just kind of passively. And then if I notice anything cool, I'll write stuff down and be like, oh, that was kind of neat. Like that song is catchy, or the way that transitioned is into another song is catchy. Second review, or second spin, I should say, of an album, I'll sit with my headphones on and like really dig into it. And then like that second half listen, I'll like write down where I want to like revisit. And I'll go back and listen to those sections. And then as I'm writing my review, I'll just have the album on in the background constantly playing.
Yeah. Back in right when we started in August of 2017, so long ago, I was going to do a review of the brand new album.
Science Fiction?
Yeah. And that was also before it came out that the frontman exposed himself to like teenagers over chat, so let's not talk about that. I was going to do a review of that, and my process was similar. Listened to it 3 times. I listened to it kind of once, like as I was like walking onto campus or something, like while I was doing other stuff. It was just I had my good headphones on, but I was not fully engaged. Second time, you just sit down and listen to it. I didn't actually make notes, but that is the time when I would make notes. Like I'd do a song by song breakdown, like make notes for each song. And if I'm not as familiar with the band's or artist's previous records, like I'll listen to, depending on how many there are, or if I know I like this artist or not, I'll listen to most of, if not all of them. But sometimes if it's like a band's like 16th album and I've only heard like one previous one, I'm not going to do that. I might listen to like a previous EP or like a couple of songs from get a feel of where the sound is coming from, and then a third listen kind of just solidify my thoughts, make sure like my notes are actually like what I feel, because like Joe was kind of saying, your thoughts can change over time, obviously, and the more you sit with an album, your thoughts evolve and they change.
I always find when I'm reviewing an album that I'll have a first spin and I'll go, this album was amazing. This happened with Brian Fallon's Sleepwalkers album, and I'm an absolute Brian Fallon fanboy. And I sat with his second solo album. I was like, I bought it on Friday, bought it on vinyl, went home, sat down with it, spun both sides, or all four sides, because it was a double LP, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this was awesome. And then I woke up the next morning and started like listening to it, and I went, "Wow, this is horrible."
Oh no!
And the more I listen to it, the more downhill my opinion of an album goes. Just, I don't know why.
I feel like that's almost like this sounds really broad, but there's like really three kind of normal ways that like you can kind of categorize it. Like you start out really enjoying it, then the more you listen to it, you're like, I'm not as in love with this as I thought. Or it's the opposite, where you're like, this is terrible. And then like you kind of get an idea for it.
Yeah.
Like you kind of get more into it and you kind of engage with it a little more and you actually enjoy it. Or you just kind of feel one way about it and then it doesn't change. And that's kind of very broad and general, and I don't know why I brought it up.
Yeah.
But it relates.
It does. And I don't know. I also think it depends on the mood you're listening in. Like when I was re-listening to new material just to refresh myself, because I'd listen to it. I mean, they released half of the album in singles before it came out.
Almost, because it's only 8 tracks. So
yeah, they definitely War on Drugs does.
Yeah, oh yeah, War on Drugs, and I don't remember who else, but like some other artist who I read about. I think the recent New Music Friday released like 5 or 6 singles, and it's like half the album. And
yeah.
Like, on one hand, like I get it, but also save something for the people that are going to listen to the full album.
Well, yeah, and I like the fact that releasing more than like the 1 or 2 singles, just because if they have such a massive discography, like, excuse me, if they have such a massive discography, like other, like something like maybe, who did I review recently? The Decemberists. They have at least 7 albums behind. No, they have more than that.
They have more, but I think that's only if you count EPs.
Okay,
because they have a bunch of EPs too.
They have at least 5+ albums behind that album.
They're on like album like 7 or 8.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna listen to 10 hours worth of music just to write a 5-paragraph.
It helps if you've been a fan of the band, or like been engaged with the band or artist for a while.
And I like the Crane Wife, and I like some of their their other
earlier, more well-regarded stuff.
But I like to go and I'll look up just the singles from every album, and I'll listen to all the singles.
Okay.
And then I wonder, what are your qualities of judgment? Because I have mine written down, but it's. I know everybody's a little different as to what they judge an album on.
Like you made note of production on our little note sheet, and
that is like a small sliver for me.
Yeah,
I love lo-fi recordings. So
I didn't take that to mean like it has to be like well produced.
It needs to be like
super high, super glossy in order to be good.
Yeah,
just like paying attention to the aesthetic that the production creates. Like I try to be more into that, but I guess I just suck or something. I try to notice that more, but it never really works. I guess.
No, yeah.
The ones that I always try to pay attention to is if I know that an artist's lyrics are going to be important, then and this is less frequent for me just because I'm a full-time student who's busy, so I don't always have time to just like sit down and listen to an album and like actually like pay only attention to that and like really listen to the lyrics. But like with artists like in the latest Mount Eerie album, with a lot of like kind of more dense hip-hop or rap records, stuff like that, where like lyrics and words are almost, if not more important than the instruments. I try and pay attention to that and consider that. Like, the lyrics affect me? Are they well written, at least by my whacked out standards? Usually when I listen to a record, unless I have like the intention of reviewing it, it's in the background. Like I have headphones on and like I'm paying attention to it, I'm listening to it. But oftentimes I'm like walking somewhere or I'm working on homework or sometimes like doing something else. And so like kind of I gather like pay attention to like the overall aesthetic and kind of like how it sounds overall. And like, do I like the overall sound of the album? And then sometimes like, okay, yeah, I really like this. I don't necessarily like remember any specific songs, unless it's like some of them have like really stick with me or like any necessary lyrics. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make note of this and listen to it more because like I'm almost positive that I enjoyed it. And then also catchiness is kind of weirdly important to me. Like when I like add songs to playlists, like not that like I listen to most of the albums and I'm not just like sitting through like playlists, but like I try and keep playlists updated and like I just put them on shuffle every once in a while. When I do put a song from like a record or a single on a playlist, it's usually because it's like it's really catchy and it like really stuck with me.
Well, like catchiness is important to you. You like a little more popular music, I feel like, than I do.
The music that sticks with me, like in terms of just like I enjoy as like not as principle, but like you don't like the Killers, right?
Not. I do love Run for Cover, oddly, and I kind of like Mr. Brightside, but that's where it ends. I'm not a huge Killers fan.
Like they are like a lot of their songs are pretty much they're extremely poppy. Yeah, and like that's kind of the focus. And I absolutely love a lot of their songs. Like I just listened to their second album, and there's a lot of songs on there. I'm like, wow, I really dig this. So like that's just kind of an example. But yeah, catchiness kind of sticks with me. What about you?
It took me a long time to like think they were okay because when I grew up, it was all about punk rock and this very like atonal, should be dissonant. You shouldn't like listening to this song, and that's why you should listen to it. It's like a lot of like the Sex Pistols, like they were catchy and hooky, but it took a long time for me to be like, that's what it is, and it's okay to say that. It's not a dirty word. A big thing for me when I review an album is the opening and closing, just because what is the first like thing I am going to be met with, and what is the thing I'm going to be left with in the silence after the album is over, like that thing you're going to be thinking about. Because I don't know, an album that's a slow burn, as much as I love those albums after you listen to it a couple of times, I should be maybe not pulled in instantly, because if you're pulled in instantly, I always find I lose my like favor with that album pretty quickly. But if I'm at least intrigued enough to want to come back, that's why like that always brings big points for me.
That's actually kind of funny because like the albums that that really like stick with me, that I really dig, and like the most recent example I can think of was Charlie Bliss's debut from last year, Guppy. Yeah, like when I listened to that for the first time, it was just really like kind of blew me away, and I was like instantly it was like caught me, and I was like, wow, this is really great. And I still love that album. Yeah. But I totally get what you're saying.
Well, like, it's funny because I listened to Guppy on NPR's First Listen, and then I heard Eva.
I think it's Eva.
Eva Hendrix's voice, and I was like, oh boy, this is something. But I kept coming.
It's a baby.
But I kept coming back to it because it didn't turn me off, but I wasn't instantly hooked. It was more of this like intrigue and kind of this, this is interesting, like, and I just kept coming back to it until
you forewarned me about her vocals. Yeah, because I was like, hey, like I'm listening to this, and he's like, oh, that's cool. The vocalist is really weird. She sounds like a baby. I'm like, oh.
And then in the first song, she does that like shriek.
He's like, what? Yeah. But I listened to it, and that, like, I didn't even have to get used to it. It just didn't bother me because I totally get it. Like, with artists that are a little weird and their voices are non-traditional, to say, it's often takes time to like grow on you, and sometimes you just never really like it. Exactly. That kind of ruins an artist's music, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then another thing like is album flow, and then when you re-listen to new material, you wrote a track-by-track breakdown of the album, and I kind of do that when I write reviews. I try to steer away from it because a lot of my early reviews were kind of these track-by-track in-depth breakdowns, and I felt they got bogged down too much in it.
Yeah, in my defense, these are just my notes.
No, yeah, I'm not.
So shut up.
Yeah, so like, but that kind of idea of how does the album go together, and like how does a track work with another track, because artists and record labels put a lot of time into their flow, and they don't just go, well, here was the order we recorded the songs, that should work, right?
Or let's just hit shuffle on like the iTunes MP3, like the fake album we made in our own like, home computer or something. And like that's what always kind of baffles me when the artist's like, yeah, I recorded or wrote like 100 songs for this, and it's a 9-track album, and you're like, holy crap, how did you even do that?
Yeah.
Like I can't even write one song, nonetheless 100, and then somehow narrow that down to 9, and you wonder like how much thought and like deliberation went into which songs in what order.
On Ear Coffee, we had a long discussion about this, but we don't do like an alphanumerical rating system.
Yeah, no. Like I was watching someone, a guy on YouTube called Deep Cuts, and he was doing like a breakdown of the electronic group Audiker, and he's talking about like they released like a 5-album series, and it's like 4.5 hours of music. He's like, and he doesn't like rate things like by score. He just like talks about like why he loves them or breaks down like an artist's discography.
Yeah.
He's like, well, this is like 4.5 hours of music. It's 5 separate like albums. I'm not going to try and give a score to this. Pitchfork, and that's because Pitchfork went through all 5 albums and gave them like scores of like 6.7, 7.2, 7.3, 6.5, and you're like, how do you determine that? How do you assign a value? It's like, and there's.
I'm guessing
we're
they
not going
have
to
like
get into the drama.
They have to have like a checklist of like,
exactly.
Does it meet this quality? Does it meet this quality? But it seems too sterile for what music is.
Especially when you go like by decimal systems.
Yeah.
Like when you kind of. Like, I don't really have a problem with Anthony Fantano's rating system, or even with, like, something like Consequence of Sound or Tiny Mixtapes, where, it's, like, 4 out of 5 or 9 out of 10 or A+ or something like that. Like, that I can see. Like, that's a good way of categorizing it.
Yeah.
And still in a broad enough sense that you're not, like, nitpicking in a way that's completely artificial and, like Joe said, sterile.
Yeah.
Personally, I really enjoy the way Stereo Gum handles reviews, and that is either in like an album of the week review or in a usually with bigger, more popular anticipated albums, the premature evaluations, which are a bit longer. And then they just have like a little selection like on a sidebar of their on rotation, which is like saying, hey, we've written about this a couple times. We may not have a review for it, but like check this out. We like this. This is like gets like the stamp of approval.
Yeah.
And like that's a kind of cool way of saying like, okay, I don't know if they think this is like the best thing in the world or if they think it's just decent, and I won't know unless there's a review, so I'm just gonna like take their word for it and at least like check it out. And I really appreciate like the kind of formless, numberless way that they're of approaching, like also that it helps engage with the listener, because like the reader has to go through the entire review, at least part of it, to even like find out, oh, does this person think the album is good? Should I, based off of this person's opinion, listen to it? They actually have to read like the page or half page or however long.
Yeah. I like the way the initial way we kind of came upon a rating system was the buy it, stream it, pass it. Kind of it's like definitely go buy it, add that to your collection, or it's decent. Like I don't know if unless you're
a big fan,
like you're not, just like throw it in your Spotify queue when you have friends over cooking on your deck or something.
Oh, if you're like depressed at 2 a.m. or something.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like every day.
Yep. Or just just like, pass on it.
If you're weirdly curious, don't buy it. Like listen to it on YouTube or something. But like it's not gonna be that worth your time.
I mean, between the Brian Fallon review I did and then the Decemberist review I did, I started putting it kind of in their discography almost. If I want someone to start listening to Brian Fallon or the Decemberists, would I have them start with this album? And a lot of times, I mean, with the last 2 records I listened to, it was nope. Listen to their good albums first, and then you can hear why we're at this album.
Yeah, and sometimes even when an album is good and when you really enjoy it, it's like, okay, I acknowledge 100% that this is not going to be the best starting place for a new fan. And like a band that I kind of repeat that mindset with is Animal Collective.
Okay.
Like I really love a lot of their records, but like certain ones are like their earlier stuff is like really experimental and really weird. And like I usually just repeat what I started with, where I'm like, hey, Pitchfork gave this an almost perfect score, and I'm like in high school, must be good. And I listened to it one night and it actually like blew my mind, and it's kind of like, okay, that's how I followed through with it, and then from there take in different directions depending on like what factors you enjoyed. But like what you kind of find and consider where album would place in terms of like, would this be a good introduction? Is this like a thing to save for later?
Yeah.
If you kind of like this style of music or this band's approach and whatnot.
That's kind of our rating system in a very haphazard way.
Long-winded.
Very long-winded. I don't know. Music is just, it's very hard to rate because someone who absolutely loves it isn't going to like what we have to say all the time. And someone who doesn't like it isn't going to like what we have to say. And it's hard to just be like...
You can't expect that from every single person. Like, obviously, there's people that are like, take certain people's word as gospel. And they're like, and that's fine. I guess, like, if you almost like force yourself to enjoy something because like someone gave it a good score, maybe you're like expanding your palate, expanding your taste, not test.
Yeah.
Maybe something good's coming from that, but like it's ridiculous to be like, I like this, therefore you should like it too.
I mean, we try to have with kind of our qualities and how many times we listen to it, and just kind of our rating system. We try to give a general rubric so we can fit every artist into in some way, shape, or form. The album we're reviewing today is New Material by Preoccupations. You and I are both Preoccupations fans. We went and saw... That was one of the first concerts we went and saw together.
Yeah,
that was the first concert we went and saw together.
Was it? I think it is... Was that before Cloud Nothings?
It was. It was Preoccupations.
Yeah, it was in the fall.
And then it was Cloud Nothings like 2 weeks later. And then it was Beach Slang like 2 weeks after that.
Yeah. Anyways, we went to see them. Joe got spat on. I got stepped on. It was great.
Preoccupations, this is their second album under the name Preoccupations.
Because they had a bit of controversy when they were criticized for using the name Viet Cong, and then they changed it because they're like, this isn't worth the trouble.
Yeah.
We're not that
attached to the name. They got protested here
at First Ave.
At First Ave, yeah.
And I think in like Ohio too or something. But like,
yeah, and they were banned from a bunch of college campuses.
Yeah.
This album is definitely a change in direction from where they started at the cassette demo, and then... Well,
especially their first self-titled Viet Cong album, which is, in my opinion, still their best release. It just has it has my favorite song theirs by far, and still Continental Shelf. It's really varied, it's really heavy, it's really dark, it's just got a lot to love about it.
Yeah.
Their next album, second self-titled under the Preoccupations name, experiments just enough, but like keeps their aesthetic going. Like they start adding more synthy stuff.
It's a little grittier. It's still got that kind of gritty lo-fi production, but you can tell they're starting to clean up their sound a little bit and work more towards the like less it's just lo-fi noise and more we're going to create atmospheres intentionally.
Yeah, like their first album it had great atmosphere, but that was almost like a consequence of just like what they were doing. It wasn't even necessarily like entirely deliberate. You're like, you kind of think to yourself, were they trying to do this? I don't care. It sounds great.
Yeah.
With the second album, much more deliberate like sound, much more like very thought out processes, and like they have like a guest vocalist, and it happens to be one of the guys from Wolf Parade, which I somehow did not know until like last week when Stereo Gum was like, their original article about it was like, hey, this song featuring Dan Beckner. I'm like, wait, what? That's who that is? Because like there's no indie rock albums don't have features.
No.
Don't have like feature lists, even if there's like a credited vocalist who you know.
Yeah.
They don't like list that in the same way that like a lot of rap and hip hop does, and that's fine, but that's beside the point.
And I was definitely going into New Material, some of the singles that came out like Antidote. I was hoping with Antidote, and then was it Disarray was the first album? No, or
Espionage was the first single. And
with Espionage, it kind of leaned towards it was going to be almost a Viet Cong 2, as I called it, their first album in a different package.
Yeah, and I can definitely feel that more with Espionage.
Yeah,
this is kind of like, that's the most energetic, most like furious song from the album, and you can really feel like the call and response vocal. It's like during like the hook. It's kind of like it's a really meaty, muscly song, and like you can really just kind of feel it. And like it has like a callback almost to the first album, where a lot of the songs have that. And
that's what I was hoping for, because I love the way that album was produced, and like Bunker Buster, and just kind of the chintzy, chimey, fragile guitars, and
it's almost like shattering.
Yeah, and just that kind of stuff. And so I was hoping for that, and that's not what we got. It was interesting. I know Fantano liked to talk about this a lot, but the way it was produced was it was like a very cavernous, hollow album. Yeah,
and I think like that kind of makes sense given like how important atmosphere is to the group. And like their atmosphere was like one of the best elements, at least of this album. Like repeatedly, I thought, like especially towards the latter end of the album, like a lot of especially in the intros of songs, there's like really menacing, really like creepy kind of just disconcerting. And that was like, ooh, this feels really weird. And then sometimes the song would like be kind of disappointment. It wouldn't really go anywhere. But at least like the atmosphere that it kicks off with and kind of maintains, you're like, wow, that's really well done. Really, I enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I was watching an interview with bassist and vocalist Matt Flegel and how much he loves the post-apocalyptic like worlds that are created in books and songs and movies. Like those are his favorite kind of things, and you can definitely tell that really took an influence on this album.
Yeah,
because of the way like the production, and then they don't really worry about the lyrics that much. They more want the lyrics to serve a sonic purpose as opposed to a word purpose.
Yeah, and like I mean the words, I didn't pay attention to the lyrics when I was doing my second listen.
Neither did I.
And like I don't think I've ever paid attention to lyrics of a Preoccupation song, because usually just the atmosphere and the instrumentals are so much more like so engaging. You just get caught up in it. And you're like, forget, are there even words? Yes. Do I care? No. And that's like Joe was saying, that's kind of what the band wants. And this album continues that trend. That's like I think something, unless they get even more poppy, is gonna keep going. And like lyrics just holding second fiddle to atmosphere, aesthetic, sound overall.
I don't know. This album wasn't bad.
No,
this isn't like a disappointing. I mean, it was a little disappointing just because it wasn't like the big epics we were kind of used to.
Yeah, what I wrote is if any other band made this album, it would be actually quite good.
Yeah.
But since it's Preoccupations and since like their first two albums are so fantastic, it's kind of disappointing. So like kind of, not necessarily to wrap up, but kind of tied into our rating system, this would definitely not be a good first album. I'd say just listen to them in chronological order, and then if you're kind of a nerd, listen to cassette, because I've listened to it like once, and it was a thing.
I was cassette when it came out on cassette. Half of them didn't work.
Yeah, I saw that in like an interview, which is funny.
But I'd also place this. I don't know. I would start in chronological order. I'd start with Viet Cong, and then I'd go into Preoccupations, and then if you want to listen to new material, go for it.
If you've listened to the first two, so you might as well.
Yeah, listen to
it's only
that.
like 36 minutes.
And then go into cassette. Because I haven't finished cassette. I've listened to like the first half a couple of times.
I passively listened to it once.
And then I'll get busy and have to not. But I definitely would give it a listen. I don't know if I would run to it.
No, especially if you're a theoretically like new fan.
If I want to listen to Preoccupations, I'll listen to Viet Cong.
A couple like final notes that I want to make is I just think this is kind of stupid, and I wrote my notes at like 2:30 in the morning last night because that's when I stopped playing Far Cry. The song Compliance, the way it starts out, it sounds like an 808 bass, like from a trap song.
Yeah.
It just sounds like the intro to like a 21 Savage song or something. So my note was Preoccupations and 21 Savage collab when. And I just thought like that's a really interesting thing. Like it sounds like almost like the intro to a trap song before like the bass kind of comes in and you're like, oh, this is Preoccupation. So just like SoundCloud rap. If any other band made this album, it'd be really good. It'd be quite good. But since we know that they can do better, it's a little disappointing. It almost sounds like a Preoccupations cover band wrote and composed, or like people that like are totally like, they love Preoccupations. Like, we're gonna make a Preoccupations album, but they aren't the four band members. They wrote and composed like all the music and everything, and then they got the actual band to record it.
That makes sense.
And that kind of like connects to my referring to it as Preoccupations Light.
Yeah.
Earlier. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just that kind of wraps it up. It just it seems like their light album, their album that maybe they needed to put out an album and didn't fully have everything.
Yeah, because it's been a while. I think there's like the longest gap between albums.
Viet Cong was 2015. Preoccupations was 2016.
Yeah, I know Preoccupations was like fall,
and then New Material was 2018.
It's been like a year and a half.
Yeah,
and like I'm happy we got a new record. Like if spending another couple months on it or like even longer would have made it better, I would have waited because like you kind of a lot of times you're like, oh yeah, cool, I like that band, but you're not like sitting there
waiting,
biding your time unless it's like
I would rather go see them live,
hip hop heads with like Frank Ocean or something or like Kanye. You're like, it's been 2 minutes, where's a new record, dude? And you're like, it's stop it.
Yeah, they're definitely not one of those bands I go running to go find. I love what I have. I love the albums I have, so that keeps me tied. And I'll just wait for them to come back to Minneapolis.
I think they're touring soon, so that'll be
I'm
cool.
excited.
Yeah, definitely check them out on tour. Like listen to their first couple albums, or even just blindly go see them. They're a great live band.
They are phenomenal.
It'll be really cool to see how they do the new songs live. But like the material from their last two, their old material is absolutely fantastic live. So I would, if they're coming near you, shouldn't be too expensive.
No.
Pretty cheap tickets. So definitely go check them out.
Definitely.
So as our final closing segment, we kind of wanted to mention and just shout out a couple bands, a couple artists that we're kind of excited about at the moment that are either just released material or releasing newer stuff
material.
coming out.
Yeah.
To keep up with saying new material a lot because it's on our minds.
So much new material.
So much.
So much new material.
Yeah, Joe, why don't you start?
Most of the ones I listed were all local bands because I've really
I think everything we listed are local, actually.
It really is. And there was one band that I refound. I had heard their
Trampled
EP.
by Turtles?
No, that and the Shackletons.
Right. Minnesota Girl's such a good song.
It is. It came out Christmas Day last year.
Yeah, because I heard it on the current.
Yeah, and then it was one of their top 10 it made the top 10 list of their 89 songs of the year. And then I listened to the EP and I'd forgotten about it. And then it came up again because they re-released a music video. But Shackleton's, their second attempt EP is so good and everything that I love about Minnesota music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, at the very least, check out the video for Minnesota Girls because it's a fantastic song. It's a funny music video.
It's the best way to have a song about Minnesota and their girls and not be cliche.
Yeah, it's a funny music video. And,
it's so good.
Yeah, check out that. Check out their EP. I'm gonna have to do that because I've heard Minnesota Girls on the current a couple times. I'm like, this is a really good song. Then I always forget to like Shazam it or make note of it, and until you brought it up again, I'm like, oh shoot, that's these guys. I need to actually listen to these guys.
Well, it's funny. Jay Gabler from the current, he's a writer, and then he's their digital producer, digital editor. Yeah. His quote about them is, "Imagine Connor Oberst with a John Belushi attitude fronting the Hold Steady."
Oh, that was in your
that was in my
review,
article.
The other article. I thought that was you came up with that, or the band came up with that.
No, Jay Gabler described him.
I'll give a brief shout out to the band Stone Arch Isles. They just released an EP, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. They had a EP release party, and I really wanted to go to it, but I think I had a commitment that night, so unfortunately. However, they're playing a couple shows coming up. They're even playing another band we're going to talk about in a minute, Margot. Yeah. They're playing the Margot's album release show, which will be really cool. They just Stone Arch Isles just released an EP called Kingdoms. I can't remember if it's plural or not. Anyways, they're like kind of a indie, like folkish, kind of really harmony based, kind of like indie folk group. Kind of similar to like Margot in a couple ways. And in my new music or my Week in Reverse note on them, I mentioned that they don't really sound like Fleet Foxes.
But they have that same...
The harmonies that they do, because I think it's like 6 dudes, so like they got harmonies for days, theoretically.
Yeah.
Like those harmonies just like really reminded me of like this of Sun Giant, Fleet Foxes' debut EP, which I love. And that was like really cool. I haven't really paid attention to the lyrics as much. I've given the EP a couple listens so far, and it's just stayed downloaded on my phone. Usually I undownload things immediately. But this is like the only thing that I've kept downloading because I just really dug it immediately, and I'm going to need to keep listening to it.
I definitely need to re-listen to it. I listened to it once when I saw them on the bill, and then you're like, oh, check them out. And I went, okay, cool. And so I went and listened to them. I wasn't quite sold on them right away, so I have to re-listen to them. I thought they were a little too maybe lackadaisical.
I can kind of see how they're almost like a little generic in some ways.
That also, if you're listening to more of a relaxed album, you can't be just like, all right, I need to sit down and listen to something right now.
It's not like if you go from like Shackletons to Stone Arch Isles, it's going to be a complete change of pace. To kind of wrap up my thoughts on Stone Arch Isles and let Joe dig into his releases. It's only like a 25-minute release. Hopefully they'll have something more coming down the pipeline. Probably not too soon because they just released their EP. Yeah, give it a listen. It's a fun little EP. Give it a listen.
Yeah, and to keep kind of in the vein of Stone Arch Isles, they're playing a show with Margot, a band I interviewed on our first Ear Coffee episode. But Margot has their album, or it's an EP. It's not a full album.
Oh, it is an EP. Okay.
Trouble Songs, and that's coming out on sometime early June. They have a show.
The release show is June 7th.
June 7th, and I have a ticket, so I'll be there. I've listened to a number of songs, and if you haven't checked out their song 16.
16 is a great song.
Is out, and the song you can purchase on Bandcamp, and I don't know if it's on iTunes. That isn't
it should be. It's on Spotify.
Oh yeah, that's only a draft of the
16.
16's the one out. If you listen to their Welcome to the Goulson session, and then I talked about it with them in our first episode, I've seen them play it live, that they've rewritten some of the lyrics. They redid the key, and it's much louder.
Ooh.
And it's so good. I love...
That's cool.
Frontman Hunter Baugh, I love his voice and how...
You love him.
I kind of do. His just the soulful... howl that he has, that I describe it as, it's just so good. I'm so excited for Trouble Songs to come out, and much like the title, they're going to be, all of the songs are dealing with a different type of like trouble people experience. Like 16 is socio-political commentary. There's going to be a song about grief. So
you're saying it's a concept record?
For the kind of.
Is it going to be their 2112?
Yes, it's going
okay.
Yes, Margot's Trouble Songs is going to be equivalent to Rush's 2112.
There's only going to be one 20-some minute song, and it's the entire EP.
Yep. And then I have two more bands I'm excited for. Trampled by Turtle's new album. They're coming back after their like 4 or 5 year hiatus. Woo. No, it was less than that. Like 2 or 3 year hiatus. Because Dave Simonette decided to divorce his wife and then focus on Dead Man Winter, his side project. And so,
which I think he had an EP out recently.
They had an album out, Furnace.
Okay, it was an album.
And then they released
two
EPs. They have one. It's called like Lake Superior, and that's kind of half instrumental, half like folky music. And then the other one is also kind of in that same vein. So I really
check
like
them out.
And the songs they've released were leading up to it, Midway, and Kelly's Bar, both just phenomenal. Kind of, if you loved Wait So Long off not their last album, but their album 2 albums ago. Yeah,
I'm excited to listen to that because I've never really gotten into them, but I recently heard...
The Middle is the last single that was released.
Okay. Yeah, I recently heard Trampled by Turtle's cover of the Pixies' Where Is My Mind?
Oh, yeah.
And it was kind of...
It's something.
It's something. I didn't care for it, but like... I'm sure that their original music is much different, much better, because like that's just a weird approach to a song that like you don't really imagine that song is a bluegrass song.
No,
but or like not necessarily bluegrass, but like that style. So
and then finally the new Heart to Gold full length release.
I still haven't listened to their new song.
You still haven't listened to Difficult?
No.
Oh god,
we've had an article on our blog for like. Almost a week, and I still haven't listened to the song.
Well, the song came out Friday, so
like
3 days.
A weekend, but still, I'm ashamed.
It's not to me. I think some of the songs off their debut EP still stuck are better, but I think it's a good introduction into. It's still got everything you love about Heart to Gold. The front man just shouting over everything.
Yeah, they're
aggressive guitars.
Definitely see them live, regardless.
They're fun.
Who cares if the new album's good or not? It's probably going to be good, but regardless, see them live. They're fantastic live. Their just energy is like off the charts.
I definitely love them, and I'm excited for the full length. And when I get home, I'm definitely putting on their debut or their cassette that they released, Still Suck, and I'm going to listen to that. Yeah.
Before we go, this wasn't on our list, but I just want to give a random shout out to Dead Century because there's still nothing's changed, nothing new, but just like. If you still haven't heard their new single from like several months ago, or
like a month ago,
it was like January.
Was it?
It was like late January when
that was still when I was doing my column in pursuit of something interesting. Still,
yeah. What happened to that, Joe?
I forgot. I don't care now.
And then they like a month ago they did a live version of a new song called 10 Ton Summer. That's on their Facebook page. That's on our Facebook page. Definitely check the single and the new song out just random shout out. They're a really great local band.
They are. They're great. I mean, we've talked about exclusively local bands in this segment because, in my opinion, Minneapolis has some of the best music.
Yeah, it's really underrated.
The country. But that's it for the show. We're gonna try and do every couple of weeks we're gonna release an episode just because,
and then possibly interview episodes.
Oh yeah,
come more intermittently podcast. But just letting you know, we have a couple new episodes in the works. We'll hopefully have a regular episode, much like this one, coming out soon. Hopefully have an interview episode coming out soon. So that's look forward to that.
Yep. Check us out on
Facebook.
Find us on iTunes.
Subscribe to our blog. Like our Facebook page. Be my friend.
Give us a rate and review on iTunes because that's how people find us, I've learned. Until next time.
I should do that.
Yeah, I haven't done it either. Oh. Until next time, I've been Joe Keyport.
I have been and unfortunately will continue to be Wes Muilenburg.
You guys suck.
America!